Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to another online teaching on use of English language in Mr. Destiny. It has been a while, not been online because of circumstances we couldn't control, but thank God we are back and we are prepared to continue from where we stopped. The last time I kicked off the series on letter writing, and I started with the definition of letter. I also went down to the definition of the first type of letter I started treating, that's the informal letter. I told us that informal letter is a letter we write to relations and friends. That also talk about the make use of informal language and talk about things that are not official. We went down to the formats of an informal letter where I stated the format starting from the address to the date to the salutation to the body of the letter down to the conclusion or the complementary close. I listed all these out. I remember I also treated the address where I said we have two types of address. We have the block type and also the slant. I also demonstrated the two, where I told us that the two could be punctuated or unpunctuated. I think these are the things I treated in the last series. Now I'm going to continue from there. Today I'm going to start with the date. Remember, some students always think that date is part of the address, but certainly the date is not part of the address. Rather, the date is a part of letter of its own that is written under the address. Therefore, you should not include the date when you're talking about the address because it is not part of it. Now, when we finish writing the address of the receiver, the address of the writer of the letter, which we have demonstrated here now. Remember all I said about the address? I said that every word in the address is expected to begin with capital letter, just as I did here. The N here, the S, the G, the S, the P, and all the rest are all in capital letter. That's very important. And remember I said that you don't put the name of the country unless the letter is going abroad. If that's the case, if the letter is not going abroad, you put full stop after the name of the state. Now, after that, the next line that follows the address is where you write the date. You do not skip any line before writing the date. And we have three types of dates. We have three types of dates we can use. We have the one we call the slash. The slash is the one we write like this. 17th, 09, 2020. This type of the date is called the slash because it appears in slash form. Now we also have another one we call the day, month, and year type. In this case, that means the day will come first, followed by the month, followed by the year. In this case, you are going to have something like this. Today is 17th September 2020. This one is called the day, month, year type. Now, there is something you can see here. The TH, the S in September is capital. After September, I put comma. At the end, I put full stop. Now, there's also another way to write the day with the top type, which we call the month, day, and the year type. In this one, the month will come first. That means you have September 17, 2020. September 17, 2020. So this one, now the month comes first, followed by the day, followed by the year. Month, day, year. This one is day, month, year. So any of them that you want, you can use here. But remember that the slash type can only be used in informal letter. You can't use slash type in a formal letter. Therefore, if you want this, it's acceptable. If you want the one that the day comes first, it's acceptable. If you want the one the month comes first, it's also acceptable. But one thing is important. Look at what is important. If you're using the one where the day comes before the month, 17th, the TH will be on the same line with the figure. It will be on the same line with the figure. You won't write your 17 this way. You won't write your 17 this way. 17th, you won't write it this way. This one is American format. That means if you use this one, you're using the American style of date. Because America will use this as date and also use it as position. But British will use this as position. That means 17th position. That's where they use this. So in date, in British format, remember we're using British English, the TH will be on the same line with the figure. Then 17th, we have September. Then we'll have 2020. This is how it should be. The TH will be on the same line, then come here. This is what I'm talking about. You should be very, very careful with this. You don't put the TH on top. Then if you are writing the one that month will come before the day, September 17, 2020. Please don't write September 17th. There is nothing like September 17th. If the month is coming before the day, the attachment disappears. But if the day is coming before the month, attachment is added. Remember, attachment is not only TH. We have RD as you have in third. We have NT as you have in second. We have ST as you have in first. So all these attachments must come on the same line if the day is coming before the month. But if the month is coming before the day, the attachment is removed. You won't say September 17th. No, rather you say September 17th. You don't say December 25th. Rather you say December 25 or you say 25th December. You don't say January 1st, but you say January 1 or 1st January. So you should know the one you're using and how it should appear in the letter. So anyone, let me just choose one right under this address. Remember I said you don't skip any line after the address. The line that follows is where you write the 17th September 2020. Full stop on here. So this is how it should appear. Assuming you are writing the day, month, and year time. Alright, that settles the dates. We said there are three types of dates. I have illustrated them. I said the slash, which you can only use in informal if you want. Then the day, month, year type, and the month, day, year type, which I also demonstrated. I believe that is very clear because this one is very important. The TH, where it should be fixed, not on top. It's on the same line with the figure. You should take note of that. Now, after the date, which I have demonstrated there, the next item that should appear in the informal letter is the salutation. The salutation. And what we call the salutation? The salutation is the aspect of the letter that informs the reader who the receiver is. I repeat, I said the salutation of an informal letter or any letter is the part of the letter that informs the reader who the receiver of that letter is. Now, remember, assuming this is the board you're using or the sheet of paper you're using to write, finally we'll have what we call the margin line. Right? Sorry, I'm not very good at this, so my line is not straight. Now, the salutation of an informal letter usually begins with dear, followed by the name you call the receiver. So let's begin here now. The next line that follows the date is where you start. You don't skip line, please. Do not skip any line. Some students make a mistake of skipping a line, or some people skip 2, 3. I don't know who's given that kind of format or that kind of style in writing. You don't skip any line. That line that follows the date is where you are going to write the dear, and the dear should be by the margin. What I mean by the margin is close to the margin. You don't give space. The reason for that is this. Now let's say dear Uju. Now, assuming you give space now, right, dear Uju, let me give you an example. Assuming you give space, dear Uju, If you write it like this, giving space here. If you want to now write how are you, as you want to greet, how will you begin? Will you begin H here? How? Or will you begin here? You get confused. So you should know that the Abuju should be by the margin, so that you will have the space to make your paragraph when you begin the body of the letter. So the Abuju now, remember, there is capital D, Uju, in the name of the person is capital U. You must not mention the name of the person. It's not compulsory you must mention the name. Assuming you have any other name you call the person, this is an informal letter. There are different types of names. We have real name, we have guy name, we have nickname, different types of names. Now, assuming this Uju is your friend and maybe you call him, let's say even Zombie, you call him Zombie, you can write there Zombie, it's allowed here. There Zombie, as long as the Z in Zombie with capital, if you write there Zombie, we now assume that this Zombie is not the name you call a friend and it's acceptable because it's an informal name you call a friend. Maybe the name you use to play jokes in the house. Now, this is very important. Now, assuming you're writing a letter to your father, remember you don't write dear father because nobody calls a father father. Any name you put here is the name you call that person. So it's even better for you to write dear daddy, dear dad, dear popsy than to write dear father because father is not a proper noun, rather father is a common noun and nobody has that common noun. You don't write dear mommy, you write dear mother, rather you write dear mommy because mother is not the name of anybody. So it's better to write dear mommy than to write dear mother. It's better to write dear daddy than to write dear father. Because any name you are going to put here must begin with capital letter, and we know that we don't begin common nouns with capital letter. So assuming you are writing dear daddy, the D in daddy should be in capital D. Because this daddy now is the name you call your father, in fact this daddy is the name your father bears. And the D is supposed to be in capital letter because you have made this daddy a proper noun. Right. At the end of it, you must put a comma at the end of it because that's the end of the salutation. This is what we call the salutation. Remember I said, in informal letter, salutation begins with dear, followed by the name you call that person. Even if the name sounds odd, it doesn't matter because that name you call that your friend or that your relation is the name that is expected to appear here, not any other name. Because this is an informal letter, you can make use of informal names. Alright, now let's continue. The next stage now is the body. Remember I said the letter is divided into three aspects, into three segments. The first segment is introduction, second segment is the body, and the third segment is the concluding part. Now when you come to the body, we are not going to the body of the letter. When you come to the body is divided into three segments too. We have the introduction, we have the core, we have the conclusion. Now, the introduction is what occupies the first paragraph and what appears in introduction. The introduction is the area where we greet and also mention the rules of writing. In this part of the world in Africa, we believe that greeting is very important. We value greeting so much and it has entered into our fabric. It has entered even in our writing. We greet first. We like greeting, but that does not mean that it is compulsory to greet first. If you don't want to greet the receiver first, you can go straight to the point and greet out loud. The only thing is that in informal letter you must greet either first or last, but not compulsory first. Now, assuming you want to greet first, which many writers in this part of the world do, you greet the receiver first. Definitely, you are going to make the greeting brief. If you're a student in exam, you don't need to over-greet the receiver because letters are not only to greet. Rather, greeting is just part of it. It's just to prepare ground for the main thing. It's not the main thing. It's unfortunate that some students will use half a page. Greeting alone. They will greet the receiver asking irrelevant questions. How is your house? How is the dog you bought new? I heard you bought a car. I heard you bought a new house. I heard you did this and did that. All in letter. You now find out that the person will greet from line 1 to about 30 lines. Greeting. And to be as if the letter is a greeting letter, but it is not so. Now, after you have written the salutation, the next thing is to greet. You want to greet them, you now begin by asking that, like say, how are you? How are you today? I hope you are doing well. I'm I'm not saying that this is the only way to begin. I'm just giving an illustration. So, if you have said this, how are you today? Question mark. I hope you are doing well. You have greeted that person. I think this is enough. You don't have to begin to ask questions. How is Auntie Stella? How is Uncle Chike that's staying with you? How is this and how is that? Those ones are irrelevant. They are not very relevant here as long as you have greeted that person. You can equally go straight to the point and say, Dear Daddy, I am writing this letter, this, without even greeting him. But if you do that, you must greet at last. So what you're saying is that as greetings is not compulsory to be made first as you're beginning the body of the letter. You can greet first, you can also greet last. If you must greet first, you must make the greeting very brief. Now, you continue by saying, I am writing this letter to ask for a change in my school. Now, let's assume you're writing a letter to your father requesting or asking him to change you to another school. That means to change the particular school you are attending now. You want him to take you to another school. That's to have a transfer to another school. You are just writing. I'm writing this letter to ask for a change in my school, and you continue that way. You just stop here. This has introduced this letter. Everybody that read this first paragraph, we know that definitely this person has greeted the daddy, and he is or she is asking for a change of an institution. That introduces the letter. Now, after this introduction, remember I said the body is divided into three parts: introduction, the core, and the conclusion. Now, after introducing this letter, the next thing we are going to now is the core. You have introduced this letter. You've told him where you're writing. You've written him. He has opened his ear to know, to have the details of your request. Now, that is what we call the core. How do you write a core? Sometimes in exams, you find out that some students will be complaining that if you ask them to write 450, like in WAEC, they'll say not less than 450 words or about 450 words. Some students will say it's too much. How can I write 450 words? It is about 2 to 3 pages. I cannot write up to that. Why you don't write up to that is because you do not plan the letter. If you plan the letter, I'm telling you, you can write up to 800 words. Yes, you can, because there are a lot of things to say, there are a lot of things to write. Now, how do you write a successful core? That is what you have to ask yourself. How can you make the core very smooth? How can you write successfully when you enter the main body, which we call the core of the letter? Now, the best thing to do, if you must succeed in writing the core, is to do what you call the planning or the outlining. The planning, or what we call the outlining. So we call it the brainstorming. Brainstorming. And what is it all about? You are going to use maybe in a rough sheet, you're going to put skeletal, it's just a skeletal presentation of the points, the ideas you want to develop in the body of the letter. Just skeletally, you present them, use your rough sheet, present them skeletally. Now, remember, if you are requesting for a change of institution or change of school to your father, definitely there must be reasons you want to change to another school. There must be reasons. A lot of reasons. Now, you can place those reasons in your outline or your, what we call the planning. Have a sheet of paper, maybe you begin to jot. What are your reasons? A lack of qualified teachers. One, is a lack of qualified teachers. This, you do it in a rough sheet. Then two, lack of facilities. Lack of facilities. Three, maybe distance, far distance. These are the reasons that you want to change school. Now, we have four. Maybe cultism. 5, maybe something like, what else have we put here? Bullying. And many other reasons. There are a lot of reasons that could make a student change from one school to another. Now, you now see that all these, you have listed it not in the letter, but in a rough sheet. Sometimes a student is assuming you don't have any rough sheet because there are some exams, they will ask you not to even go with a plain sheet. So if that is the case, you can do this even before you start writing the address. And if you do it, you just cross it with a line. The marker will understand what you're doing in an exam situation now. The marker will understand that this way you did your outline. You understand, you just write on top of it the outline of the plan. Now what it means is that these are ideas, these are points. You are going to develop into paragraphs. Now remember that you are expected to develop the most important item before the least one at last. So the most important one should be developed, should be treated first, should be discussed first, while the least important one should be discussed last. Now you look at what you have put down there and take the one that's the most important to you. In fact, the one that's the most important. If you look at all these, you find out that lack of teachers, qualified teachers is the most important. You still number each one this time. Lack of athlete is still the second most important. You list it 2. Now we check. Far distance, cultism should be 3 now. Now we have far distance. Okay, bullying should be 4. Now this is 5. What we are saying is that the most important one should be treated first. Now you have numbered this side before. You are numbering this side. I am telling you how to plan the body of the letter. That's the core of the letter. Now you are now going to be developing these items into paragraphs. Remember, you must write in paragraphs. Some students don't know when to end the paragraph and when to begin a new one. Why some students even write without paragraph? They just write the whole thing without paragraph sign. Is very unfortunate. Some of them are not taught well and some of them take it for granted that paragraphs don't matter. Now you see, this one you have written one, this side should be treated first, this one second, this one third, this one fourth, and the far distance last. You're not going to make use of the numbers here, you're going to make use of the numbers here because there must be proper organization in your points you have raised. Now that means you're going to begin the next paragraph with lack of qualified teachers. You begin to tell your father how your school does not have qualified teachers and it's affecting your academics, it's affecting your performance, it's affecting all you do in the school. Because when you don't have qualified teachers, definitely you won't have quality teaching and quality learning. Now, what it means is this. After you have finished discussing everything about lack of qualified teachers, that paragraph will end. That will be the end of that paragraph. And you enter a new paragraph. And the new paragraph you're going to enter is lack of facilities. What about facilities? Classrooms, teaching equipment, teaching aids, library, and all the rest. Laboratory and all the rest. These are facilities on ground. Your classroom, they have fun, they have light, they have this, whatever that you need to make academics move smoothly. These are facilities. After you finish talking about or writing about lack of facilities, that paragraph will end. You enter one. You find out that before you finish discussing this, you have got 5 paragraphs, including the introductory paragraph. That will be about 6 paragraphs. I know you can have more things to say, more ideas to develop. So the more ideas you develop, the more paragraphs you have. But I warn you, do not write all these in the same paragraph. You are going to lose a lot of marks. If you put all these things without paragraphing each of the points, you're going to lose marks. Now you're not going to do well there. So here now, some students also make the mistake of, after they have introduced the letter, they begin by saying, I want to give you reasons why I want to change to another school. Firstly, or first, they say lack of qualified teachers. They discuss already about lack of qualified teachers. They say secondly, then they say thirdly, fourthly, fifthly. This is too bad. If you do that, you are numbering your paragraphs in words. It's just like saying 1, 2, 3, that's what it means. So you do not number your paragraphs either in words or in figure. Rather, you use what you call the paragraph connective. There are ways you can use to introduce a new paragraph. Words like besides, again, furthermore, in addition. These are ways you use. You don't say firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly. That means if your points are up to 10, you say 10thly, 20thly. No, it will work. So please do not number your paragraphs in words or in figure. Rather, you use paragraph connectives. I've given you a demonstration of some of them. Example of some of them, like in addition, furthermore, besides, again. These words can begin new paragraphs. Immediately you give them the space, you begin the paragraph, and when that paragraph ends, you go into another paragraph with a paragraph connecting, and it will work well for you. Now, another thing I have to say in the bottom of the letter, an informal letter, is that try as much as you can to avoid writing words that can be contracted in full. You don't do that. You should contract every contractable word, because when you contract words, it makes the letter sound informal. Remember, you're writing an informal letter. So one of the qualities or features of informal language is contraction. What do you mean by contraction? If you want to write cannot, you don't write cannot, rather you write can't. You know that can't is a contracted form of cannot. So in informal letter, use can't. But in informal letter, use cannot. So contract every contractable word. If you want to write was not, you write wasn't. This will make the letter sound informal. It will make the letter sound informal. So contract every contractable word. Contract every contractable word. In informal letter also, you are allowed to bring in some jokes, because you expect that this is a letter you're writing to your friend, so you can joke with your friend, you can add jokes, you can add some fun to it, to make it lively. It's an informal letter, it's allowed, but do not joke with people that don't deserve joking. Like you're joking with your father, so you don't do that. I mean, if you're writing to your friend and your mates, you can add 1 or 2 jokes. Yes. You can also use borrowed words or borrowed language, 1 or 2. But that does not mean you will fill the whole letter with borrowed language. Like you can use 1 or 2 pidgin here. Yes. But if you're using such language of borrowed words or borrowed expressions, you must put them in quotes to let the reader know that these words are not English words or English expressions, but you just borrow them to garnish your expression. That should not exceed 3 or 4. It should just be 1 or 2 or 3. Do not flood the whole place with the whole letter with pidgin English as if you are now writing in pidgin. And bring 1 or 2 to garnish the expressions, especially when you are writing to your colleagues, when you are writing to your friends, and all the rest. It will also add color to what you are writing. Remember, I said you must use contractions. Contract words that are contractable. You can also add 1 or 2 borrowed words or borrowed expressions or borrowed language. Or coinages. There are some English words we call coinages. Some coinages, like maybe you are a neighbor person and you're writing to a friend, you say, my father just bought an applicative shoe for me. Applicative. Remember, if you're saying applicative or thereabouts, we know that this is not an English, we just coined it from Igbo expression. So if you are doing this, you must put it in quotes so that the reader will know that this word is not an English word, so that you save him the trouble of going to the dictionary to look for the meaning of applicative, which he will never find. So if you have any coinage, there are some coinages we use, like somebody can say, how the thing happened, I can't overshit. I can't overshit. Now you see that overshit is not an English word, that you just brought the coinage there, and the reader, your friend that is reading this, will understand that you just brought this as a coinage. So you must put it in quotes so that the reader will not bother looking for the meaning of overshit in the dictionary, which is not possible to find because it's a coinage, it's not an English word. Alright, these are the things that are very, very important if you are developing the core of the letter. Now, we are moving down to the conclusion, which is the third segment of the body. I said the body is divided into the introduction, the core, and the conclusion. Now, how do you conclude an informal letter? Now, every letter has conclusion. It's just like when somebody is speaking. If somebody is making a speech, you must conclude. If not, you end up in what we call extemporaneous hurt. You end up in extemporaneous hurt. Extemporaneous hurt, which simply means stopping without signal. You just stop. No signal. You must give signals to show the reader that you are about to stop, or you're about to round off your discussion in the letter. Now, how do we conclude letters? Conclusion is always the last paragraph of the body. If you have greeted first, and it is the penultimate paragraph of the body, if you are to greet last, why the greeting should be the last one? I mean, as you have greeted here now, the conclusion should be the last paragraph. But assuming you did not greet at the beginning of this letter, you want to greet at last, the conclusion should be second to the last, which means the greeting will now be the last paragraph. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So if you are concluding the letter, there are many ways you can conclude the letter depending on the type of letter you're writing. Assuming your letter is a request, the best way to conclude it is to make a promise. You know, request, when you're asking for something. Assuming this student now, this child is asking their father for a change of school. If the child writes this letter at the end, it is very good, it is very pertinent, in fact, it's encouraging for the child to promise the father that he or she will perform better in the new school that he is to be posted. Yes, that's a promise. That is, I have been performing woefully in mathematics because I don't have a good teacher here to teach me mathematics or English. I promise you that if you take me to the new school, I'm going to perform better or even best. It becomes a challenge to your father. So when you are making a request in a letter or you're writing a letter of request, the best way to conclude is to make a promise. You know, promises move human beings, even God. Yes, promises are very important. They are very important. When you make a promise to somebody, it instigates that person to act. Yes. Now, if you make this request and make a promise, it instigates the receiver to, respond to your request, even before you know it. Now, if a letter is a protest, what do you mean by protest? If the letter is a complaint, you are complaining of something that you don't like, you are protesting, you don't want it to continue, you want it to have a stop, definitely you are going to suggest. You are writing a letter to your father protesting on how your elder brother has been siphoning the money has been sending to both of you from abroad. Definitely, if the money comes, maybe because it comes into your brother's account, he will use the money as he likes and just starve you. Definitely, you are writing a letter to your father now to complain on this particular issue. It's a protest letter. It's a protest letter. In that letter, if you are concluding, it is pertinent for you to tell your father what you want him to do. I tell you that your father may not be the best solution to know the solution to that problem. It is you that wears the shoe, it is also you that knows where it pinches and the best solution to it. So the best thing to do is to suggest to your father how you want this problem to be solved, problem state. And how do you do that? You tell him, Daddy, I believe it is better that you send my own money into my own account and send my brother's money to his account. It's a suggestion. That should be at the end of it, and when you have poured out your mind, when you have protested much, told him all that has happened and why you don't like what is going on, you need to suggest so that he will also know the best way to tackle the problem. Although he is not bound to accept your suggestion, but it will help him to plan on how to solve the problem. So the best way to end the protest letter is to suggest. Now, if a letter is a commendation or a consolation, the best way to conclude it is to encourage. You encourage. You will encourage. If you are commending somebody who has done something good, you commend that, you encourage that person to do more. Your friend just won a scholarship, maybe wrote a scholarship exam and won and passed and is not having the scholarship. You are writing a letter to him. The best thing to do to him is encourage him to have more, to get more, to study more, to get more scholarship. You don't just praise him and stop. No, you praise him, you commend him, and you encourage him to do better. Because there is always better thing in life. Nobody is at the peak. You continue bettering your situation, continue bettering your achievement, and all the rest. Now, if a letter is a consolation, we know what we mean by consolation. When somebody is bereaved or maybe lost something that is precious, you want to console him. The best way to end that letter is to encourage, not to remind him of his sorrows. Sometimes people don't know how to visit the bereaved. They will go to the bereaved family, they see the son of the dead, or the daughter of the dead, or the wife or relation of the dead. Instead of encouraging the person to be to be encouraged, make the person to be encouraged, to have faith that tomorrow will be better than today. You continue reminding the person what the dead was doing when he was alive, what the achievement of the dead. This man standing here now, you mean this picture? This your father that is in this picture is in the mortuary. Jesus. So this man is in the mortuary. Hi. So this wonderful, handsome man is in the mortuary. Hi. Are you encouraging, or that means that person is a witch or a wizard? If you begin to look at the picture of the dead and begin to comment on how handsome or how beautiful the person is, you didn't come to console, rather you come to get the sorrows of the bereaved. So if you are writing a letter to someone that's bereaved, at the end you must encourage that person to continue living, because the world has a lot to offer in the future that is better than now. That is how such letters should be concluded. So that is the body. We have known how to conclude the body of each type of letter we are writing. The letter is a request, you make a promise to instigate the receiver. The letter is a protest, you suggest to provide solution to the problem. The letter is a commendation and consolation, you encourage the person that's receiving so that he will have hope and continue living well, or continue achieving better things in the future. Now let's look at the last aspect of this letter, the informal letter. And the last aspect is what we call the complementary clause. The complementary clause. Let me wipe this. The complementary clause. Very, very important. The complementary clause. Now, when you're talking about the complementary clause, we're about signing up the letter, wrapping up the letter entirely, the end of the letter. The end of the letter. You have said everything you want to say. You want to end the letter. Now, every complementary clause begins with yours. And complementary clause of a letter is just letting us know who the writer of this letter is. Notice you should not mention your name, if not tell us anything about you. It is here that we are going to know who the writer is. We only saw your address. Remember, the name is not included in the address. Please, you don't include your name in the address. You don't. Now, it's written at the right flank, the bottom right of the letter. Bottom right, not left. Americans end their own at the left. British end their own at the right. Now, it begins with yours. And this yours will begin with capital Y. I hope you know the difference between small y and capital Y. The small y, the leg crosses the down line, small y. The capital Y, the leg does not cross the down line. It ends at the line here, just the same level. But the two branches up will touch the up line. I can remember those days when in primary school we are taught how to writing. They will write. My father is a farmer. They say write it 100 times. You begin to write. Sometimes you run away. You write. My father is a farmer. And the fact that writing book has, I think, a red, green, something like that. Then they will expect you to put the legs of M to where it should be and the up where it should be. Those days we are taking it for granted. We didn't know. That's when we are taught how to write very well. Now you see that those days, if you are writing, you see line here, then green one in the middle. They will put this one or this one, and then there will be a line in the middle here to show you the one that is capital and one that is small. Now you see that the branches of this Y will be touching the up line, while the down one will not cross the down line. That's the capital Y. The capital Y. Please, it's very important. If you don't put it that way, you are not doing it right. Now, yours. Now, if the letter is going to your relative, you write yours affectionately. Yours affectionately. Then, if the letter is going to friend, you write yours sincerely. Yours sincerely. Affectionately for relations and sincerely for friends. Now, remember, the affectionately, the A will be small a. And if you're using sincerely, the S will be small s. So assuming this letter is going to your father, you write yours affectionately, the A will be small. You write yours affectionately, comma. Look at my A here is the small a, and my Y is the capital Y. Now you put comma at the end, and you will write your name. This name may be real name, can be abbreviated name, it could be nickname, it could be maybe pet name. Maybe you write yours affectionately Ngo. You can only write yours affectionately Ngozi. You can write yours affectionately Aike. You can write yours affectionately whatever you want to. The receiver calls you is what you will write here. Please, there should be no signature here. There should be no surname here. I repeat, you don't sign signature in informal letter. You don't write surname in informal letter. It is only the name which the receiver or which the writer calls you that you will write here, whether it is full name or not. No surname, no signature in informal letter. That is it in informal letter. Alright, I'm going to move down to the other type of letter, and that is the formal letter. Let me quickly move down to the formal letter. The formal letter. I usually say, if you have any question,